Selamat pagi everybody and welcome to another episode on Xero's YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about the major patch that hit today. So I woke up today and I was starting scrolling my Discord and I noticed that the Phase 3 Season 0 patch just hit and was announced today, and it was pretty huge, let me tell you. So this video intentionally was intended to be shorter because we're just going to talk about the gameplay patch analysis, but because they released multiple changes in preparation for today's release, official launch of Phase 3, we're going to talk about that. But first, let's jump into the gameplay analysis. So let's start off with the gameplay patch analysis on all the changes that is happening or has happened going into Season 0 of Phase 3. So the first thing I want to talk about is the energy and card draw scaling changes. So in the previous patch, there was a huge turn 1 advantage. I think based on stats, it was a 62% win rate for whoever starts first. So there was a huge turn 1 advantage as the player who starts first has a free return, as well as getting better energy efficiency usage, especially if drawing energy gain early. But in the latest patch, they sort of reverted back a little bit, and the advantage, in my opinion, does shift back towards turn 2. It's because of this better scaling in terms of card draw for turn 2, as well as turn 2 player being able to nearly cycle through their entire deck when they reach turn 3. If they have any sort of card draw like Hero, like Early Bird, like Blue Moon, they potentially can bypass one full deck cycle of having no revenge cards and cursed cards. So I'm not 100% sure how the changes will go and affect win rate, but from what I do see, that is that the card draw differential between both these players is pretty huge. Turn 1, the player who starts first on their second turn has only 3 cards to use on 2 energy. So if they draw any Nemos or any Cottontails that early on, they really get affected. But time will tell. We'll have to see how these changes will affect the meta and whoever wants to start turn 1 or turn 2. So the next change I want to talk about is the AoE is now considered multi-hit attack. So that is a big nerf to nearly all AoE attacks, as you cannot equip the plus 10 attack charms on AoE cards anymore. So you can only equip up to, I think the highest damage is a bird charm, which is like plus 6 AoE damage, which is going to be a big nerf to all AoE attacks. And also now all runes in the latest changes do differentiate between multi-hit and single-hit attacks. So you don't get 15 damage bonus from Curse Ritual. And with all these changes, I do expect AoE to be more balanced at a much better scale. Next up, I want to talk about the changes to damage reduction. So this is a sad day for all you Wall Gecko fans because of the changes, right? Cap damage of damage reduction has been changed to 35%. So the only way you really reach 35% is with the Wall Gecko plus the Dawn rune that gives you damage reduction according to buffs, or 30% if you use something like a Pangolin Scale plus a Wall Gecko. So, sorry, 40%. It's still 40%, but it gets capped at 35% now, which is a big change, right? And Blood Moon damage is now unaffected by damage reduction. So even if you use Wall Gecko, you still take the full damage from Blood Moon. Even if you use Pangolin Scale, you still take the same full damage as anyone else. So it is very difficult to make a Blood Moon team work now. Their main win condition was removed. I believe there are still some ways. I have been experimenting on at least theory crafting on different card options, but we'll see if that comes into fruition. But I personally think that it is going to be almost impossible to run a good Wall Gecko team that consistently wins. Next, let's talk about the card changes. I won't go through all the cards because there was a lot of cards that was changed, a lot of them very minor, sort of like a reminder to you guys that, hey, toys still exist, here's 5 more damage. But hey, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm going to talk about the more significant ones that I think are meta defining. So the first one is Innocent Lamb. It is now a 0 cost card. It does have its innate mechanic removed, but it also banishes as well. So this is a big upswing in terms of being able to set up for anything such as a Topaz comp or a Rage comp. Now you're able to use it for basically free. You get a free banish, you get another copy of perhaps a Confident or Zeal or Puppy, or anything else actually, as long as it's a skill card, right? So if you play Innocent Lamb in a banished comp, now you suddenly have 2 more banished cards, which you essentially are able to get for free. So that is a huge change in terms of being able to set up your Topaz or Rage. So there are also now more scaling options. Previously, there was basically only Tiny Dino, Little Owl, as well as Nutcracks, but now they've increased it to Bamboo Shoot, Scaly Spear, Feather Spear, as well as Trump. So now whenever you use one of these cards, you scale the damage of all Trump cards by 6 per turn, and it's capped at 90. So a nice little buff for it to be able to play it in any sort of mid-range comp. Next, the biggest change I think of the patch is Carrot being banished. Now, Carrot being banished affects aggro teams in a huge way. Ronin and Kotaro lose some of their value after the first rotation of cards because now you don't get that extra energy that usually allows you to continuously do massive amount of damage. And the damage drop-off per turn on aggro teams who run Carrot will fall off after the first cycle of cards. So this is pretty much in line with something like a Nemo or Cottontail, where you do lose that additional burst damage at the first turn, and it does reduce the power levels of aggro teams quite hugely, because previously they were able to continuously do damage at every deck cycle. Now, after the first deck cycle, they lose essentially decent amount of damage, because, you know, Kotaro gets 15 damage less and Ronin gets a bigger chunk left. So with all these changes in the cards, it does signal some sort of rise of the mid-range meta. Previously, after the Rosa nerf, mid-range was pretty hard to run. Basically, essentially, you only had rage comps, which was pretty hard to set up and rune dependent. But now, with all these changes, we might see more and more mid-range teams happening. So if you want to know more about mid-range teams, you can watch my first video on how to build a deck. That's going to explain a little bit more on the deck archetypes and how they interact with each other. So next, let's talk about the rune changes. I'm not going to talk about all the runes as well, because there are a lot of changes, but we're going to talk about those who I think are pretty significant. So the first thing I notice is the Energy Guru change. So instead of 8 energy per damage cost used on the bird, now it only deals 6 damage, which sort of makes it nearly on par with Feather Charms on a bird in terms of damage. But it is still more consistent. But Feather Charms do have a better upside as compared to Energy Guru now. So potentially we might see something like a 4 to 6 Feather Charm bird build that could potentially be good. Next, I want to talk about the Dominant Predator. It received a buff. So when you use Dominant Predator on a beast right now, it applies bleed for 2 turns if the target doesn't have bleed and the Axie equipped is at 75% HP or above. So you cannot stack the bleed with Dominant Predator, but it's a nice little bonus that every non-multi hit attack is able to give you some bleed. So nice little change there. Not sure if it's going to make it really meta, but I think it's important enough to bring up in this patch analysis. Next, Curse Ritual change so that it is in line with AoE changes, as well as probably the biggest change in terms of runes is that Poison Touch is now solo, which reduces the survivability of poison teams slightly. Now they cannot just run, you know, just Poison Touch and just rely on damage reduction to survive. Now they kind of need to play a little bit more shields, especially since that only one Axie can have Poison Touch. But we might see something change, like perhaps maybe, you know, a Beast Poison or a Dust Poison, utilizing the rune that gives you damage reduction. So that's going to be the changes. And one more major change that was included later on is that poison is now affected before the card draw. So previously, when you are poisoned and if you die to poison, you actually lose the cards on the Axie that dies to poison, because you draw the card and then the Axie dies. But now with the changes, poisons will hit before the card draw, so you will not draw any cards on the Axie that is dying to poison, which does reduce the power level of poison teams even more. So we might see a huge drop in popularity of poison teams. It does make them more balanced, and I think it's going to be harder to make a poison team work, but there are definitely still possibilities. So the conclusion is, after all these changes, We talked about reading between the lines of what's not in the balance changes to kind of find out what's going to be meta in, again, the how-to video of the deck building. You gotta check that out, guys, if you haven't. So reading between the lines, Guild and Leafy teams were pretty much completely unaffected by the changes. Guild teams don't really work well without runes and charms, so we might not see them early on in the season, but once people get Bubble Paste and Heart of the Ocean, they are going to be very popular. So in the end, it's going to be, once again, the Leafy team that I talked about in the video of the deck building as well. That is going, what I feel is going to be dominant very early, especially for the aggro archetype, because they were pretty much completely unaffected. There was a slight Miracle Leaf, but without runes and charms, I think the Leafy teams and some Kotaro teams are still going to be the best aggro team. So there are a lot of changes as well in terms of mid-range and combo archetypes. Now we're going to see them much easier to run, and we might be seeing them a lot in when the season starts as well. They are countered by aggro unless the mid-range team is able to stall out to reach their win condition, like Rage or like reaching maximum Topaz stacks. But with all these changes, especially with the Innocent Lamb, we might be seeing them come back into the meta. Poison is still strong, but due to the fact that there will be less and less aggro teams and it's going to be heavily mid-range, but they will not be as dominant as we've seen after the postseason of Season Alpha. And finally, I think it's time to press F for healing teams. I don't think we'll be seeing any of them until someone finds a crazy sick build that makes it work. So guys, enjoy it while it lasts. Now, let's talk more about the changes in terms of my overall mechanics for Season 0, which is also Phase 3, the start of Phase 3, which means that SLP will start porting over from Classic and into Origin. So after, the moment you see this video is pretty much when SLP has completely shifted from being able to be earned on Classic on towards V3 or Origin. So final bid adieu to all the scholars playing V2 now. Everybody pretty much has to play V3, right? Except those who are competing in the AxieCon World Championship. Shout out to my teammates at Meditate. You guys have been training very hard, and I hope you guys do very well in the AxieCon qualifiers. Anyways, SLB will only be rewarded for players ranked Boar or higher. So you gotta get to Boar or higher to start earning SLP. Starter Axies also do not gain SLP, and overall SLP earning is affected by Ronin level. So Ronin level is the amount of NFT Axies that you use in your starting lineup. So when you have 3, you earn you basically are Ronin 3, and you earn the maximum amount of SLP you can at your rank. Another big change is that instead of 14 days of minting of SLP compared to Classic, now in Origin you only need 7 days of minting for SLP. But at the start of Season 0, there will be no SLP minting for 30 days. So that means 0 SLP emission for 30 days. This is so that Sky Mavis can monitor and fix any bugs before it becomes very major. And by my rough calculations, that is 151 million SLP basically removed over the next 30 days. So that is a decent amount. There is, of course, still 41 billion in circulation, but with the crafting changes that require SLP, we might see that floating supply be reduced by quite a bit. So this is not financial advice. This is not any sort of a decision to, you know, pump SLP or buy SLP. Do your own research and, you know, invest or buy safely. Next, I want to talk about the Season 0 crafting changes. Now you can integrate SLP into your crafting. I've created this nice little table, which you can pause right here and check it out. Right, it's going to be pretty huge. Progression of your crafting level will increase your chances. As you progress in crafting level, you increase the odds of getting a higher tier runes and charms. Now you also have the option of using more SLP and less Moonshards during crafting. So it's basically the same if you want to craft a NFT rune or charm. It just gives you the option of being able to ramp up your crafting by just putting in more SLP and less Moonshards. So Moonshards will only reduce, Moondust will only reduce the rare rates and increase other rates. So they cannot be crafted anymore. So they are only obtainable from Adventure and Rewards. So the AXS rewards for leaderboards on this Season 0 has been increased quite tremendously, 20% increase roughly across all reward tiers compared to Season Alpha. So if I were to finish at 25 to 50 like I did in Season Alpha, I would be getting 19 more AXS. And the first place will be getting 600 AXS. That is insane. And that gives me a little bit more motivation to just continue grinding. The rewards do only go up to the top 20,000, so make sure you give it all your best and try and get your hand in some of these rewards. Now we're going to talk about the Season 0 Moonshard and reward changes. So they have increased the amount of Moonshards you win from Arena, but they have pretty much reduced or removed it from everywhere else. So there's decreased Moonshards from rank up rewards, adventure, star milestone, as well as the daily foraging box, and also completely remove Moonshard bonus from your account leveling up. But they have also added utility recipes and sealed runes and charms when you level up your crafting, as well as provide you utility recipes from your rank up rewards as well. So what this change basically means that they are rewarding players who perform well in Arena and reduce the emission of Moonshards from pretty much everywhere else that is skillless. So that is in line with the basically what Sky Mavis has trying to be pushed. More skilled gameplay leads to more rewards. So finally, let's talk about the Season 0 matchmaking and victory star changes. Now, firstly, you cannot find the same player that you faced in your previous 3 matches. So instead of being able to play against a player multiple times, now you cannot find the same player if you played them in your last matches. So there will be an ELO system once you hit Challenger. Essentially, all stars are multiplied by 10. So when you reach Challenger at 180 stars, you essentially start out with 1.8k ELO, and every win or loss gives you plus 10 or minus 10. So there is additional stars at the start that is given to all players depending on their ranking in the Alpha season. So if you were ranked in Dragon or Challenger, you will find yourself ranking up faster to reach where you were. But if you were ranked lower, then you have to grind it the whole way. There is also a new mechanic, which is decay system in your ELO for all challengers. So if you reach Challenger and if you don't play at least one ranked game for 2 days, you will lose 100 ELO. So you will lose this ELO until you hit back to Dragon or until you start playing games again. So I'm not sure of the duration of the decay, of how often you lose the 100 ELO. That is not apparent in the patch notes, but I think once the season starts, we can have a better idea about that. And also, they also removed the additional stars that you gain or lost that was affected by the star difference. Well, because we're not running any star system after Challenger anymore, so that doesn't make sense. So that is completely removed. Finally, we do have free stickers for everyone. Who doesn't like free stuff? So there are 2 free stickers given around. One is, I believe, whoever starts playing a game. And the second is if you reach top 20k in the leaderboard's last Alpha season. So 2 new stickers, nice little cosmetic that you can use. And they look pretty cute as well. Finally, before we end the video, I would like to commend Sky Mavis. They've been delivering at every single milestone after the Ronin Bridge hack, and the product they've created so far is getting better and better. So props to Sky Mavis team and everyone in it. You guys are doing a tremendous job, and I hope you guys keep it. That is basically the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed the little TLDR and analysis I did. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to start grinding right away, and good luck to everyone else in this season.